Welcome along to our latest lunchtime author talk from Hillingdon Libraries. We're joined today by Joanna Toye, a long-standing scriptwriter for the BBC, and more recently, the author of the Shop Girls series, which is a saga set in World War II. So we'll be talking today about the fifth book in this series, which is called Victory Girls, which was released this time last week, so lovely and new. And during this, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Jo, then please do join in by putting them in the chat box and the comments box on Facebook, and we'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, if you're watching later as a recorded one, it's too late. But hopefully we'll get to hear all about the book itself and the whole series and answer any questions you might have had. So welcome along, Jo. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
First question. This is a new book, only just out. Tell us all about it.
Well, fair enough. As you said, The Victory Girls is actually the fifth book in the Shop Girls series. And we thought it was time, actually, as the girls approach the end of World War II, to give them a new title because they have got victory in their sights. But the book actually opens in 1944, so there's quite a way to go. I mean, luckily for people who went through it, they didn't know quite how far they had to carry on after sort of, 5 years already of war. But the main trio are Lily, Gladys and Beryl, and they met as juniors at my fictional department store, Marlowe's, which is in a fictional Midland town. It's the smart department store, family owned in the town. Every town had one in those days, didn't they, until quite recently, and then the big groups took over and now they've all folded. So Lily is on children's wear, Gladys started on toys. Beryl, who was really initially a bit of a thorn in everybody's side, thought quite a lot of herself, because there has to be some grit in the oyster. She was working there as well. But over the course of the years, they've all become fast friends. Beryl is now married with a little boy, although she's still working. Gladys is about to have her first baby. And this is the big dilemma for Lily, who's unmarried still in the novel, because she's now at an age where she could, and she feels should, join up, join the ATS, the WAF, whatever. But Gladys is about to have her first baby, and her husband, who she's met over the course of the books, is away at sea. Where does Lily's duty actually lie? So she is really, really torn. She wants to do her bit for a country, but she wants to be helping her friends, because Beryl is one she's quite flamboyant. She's always got big ideas, and she often trips herself up over them. So Lily matures really over the course. She's matured over the course of the books, and particularly in this one, she has quite a lot thrown at her, way beyond Gladys's giving birth and whatever Beryl's getting up to. There's a family crisis as well. And she's still got to come out the other end, but we do finally get to VE Day.
Excellent. And I was asking earlier about whether the sales have been good, and it seems that it's a positive response so far.
Yeah, very much so. What's really encouraging is there have been a lot of pre-orders, which means that people have really got involved with the characters, just as I do. I mean, to me, they're real people. They're like another family. And I hope that's what comes over in the writing, because unless they actually read and feel like real people that you might want to spend time with, or that you might have as friends, or they're recognizable types, you think, oh yeah, there's someone like that in my family, whether you love them or love to hate them, whatever it is. You can't engage with a book like that. So
yes,
that's the kind of thing that
first chat was a bit about the granny who steals the peppermint creams. I thought that sounded like a real person. So next question I'd like to ask is about research for historical fiction. It's obviously really interesting to find out how people find out about the era they're writing about. And obviously the Second World War was not that long ago. There's still some people that remember it. So how did you go about gathering information for the series?
Well, the whole inspiration came from me going to a very small exhibition about a real department store called Beatty's, which started in Wolverhampton, which is not far from where I am. And this exhibition had just got everything about this shop from the time it was set up in 1877 to about the year 2000, sort of wonderful sales bills from the 1920s with people in those sort of shimmying dresses, right through kind of, pop stars, so-called, in the 60s visiting the record department. But the fascinating thing to me was about the Second World War. and what the store had to go through. So as a department store, it had been used to having luxury goods, which weren't really very available. And the other problem was hanging on to staff who were going off in droves to join up. And apart from that, the staff who remained were these very young staff, like Lily and her friends when they started, and retired staff who'd had to come back to help. So it's a little bit like the kind of volunteering that we've seen recently with people stepping up. So the other thing that happened in the wartime at the store was they kept hens on the roof of the store because everybody had a ration of 1 egg a week. But if you swapped your egg ration coupon for grain, if you could get hold of the chickens in the first place, then you'd got a supply of eggs, you know, certainly more than 1 a week per person. They also had to give up part of the second floor to store aircraft parts. There were lots of factories nearby, West Bromwich, Birmingham, so they were storing aircraft parts there. And all the staff had to be trained in putting out fires and first aid, you know, in case of a bomb dropping, basically. So that was a really good starting point. So I definitely wanted to meet some staff from the store. Obviously, nobody would be left, or I didn't expect anyone to be left who'd worked there during the war, but I found people in their 70s and 80s who had worked with people who had been, so there was that connection. So that was great. I went behind the scenes in the store, which is now closed, sadly, but before it was. And of course, the memorabilia had been given to Wolverhampton City Archives. I went there and found a lot more information. And after that, I drew on a lot of family memories. My mum nursed in the war and my dad was in the 8th Army. So Lily has 2 brothers. One, of course, had to go with the 8th Army to the desert, which is where my dad was. And the other brother joined the Navy, which is what my father-in-law did. So all those kind of things all fed in. The BBC had a wonderful project a few years ago, an oral history project, and those reminiscences have been put online. So those were very, very good for detail. And I read a lot around, you know, memoirs and diaries and novels about the Second World War, just to give a period flavour, really.
Yeah, and one of the other questions I was going to ask, which leads on from that, is are there any books, films, TV series that you found really useful, or that you felt tied in with the book, or that you'd recommend to people that have enjoyed your series?
Well, a lot of that. I mean, I do like to sort of steep myself in the 1940s. I'm having to kind of come back into the 21st century now because it's been a long time writing these, over 4 years, really. Thank goodness for Talking Pictures TV, which puts on these wonderful 30s and 40s and now later films. I've watched all of those, the sort of In Which We Serve, Three Came Home, Millions Like Us is a great one about these obviously very sort of mixed range of people, girls who join up. That kind of thing really just helps with atmosphere. So I'd be always looking in the background like, oh, there's an advert for Hovis, or Players filter tip cigarettes. Yes, of course, you know, that would be good. And I became absolutely addicted to Foyle's War. Not that it was a detective series, but again, just sort of seeing what people were wearing. The colour palette wasn't really very huge at the time. A lot of the clothes were quite, not exactly drab, but there was a lot of fawn and sort of sagey green, because inevitably, just as fashion's influenced by what's going on, those were the dyes which were around. And unless you had a great stash of material saved from before the war and you were quite handy with a sewing machine, which luckily Lily's mum Dora is, you could be a bit stuck, particularly when utility fashions came in and clothing coupons, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear. I love the story about the chickens on the roof. That's brilliant.
So bizarre. They had this flat roof and that was it. You know, they've got the fire watchers up there sweeping the incendiary bombs off, and these poor chickens.
Yeah. So one of the reviews I read about the book described it as a family drama, community spirit and love, and a warm, compassionate read, which sounds really heartwarming and lovely. Is there a risk that when we're writing about or reading about the war, it can almost become nostalgic and cozy and a bit too comfortable? And how do you mitigate about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Every time I see the books described as heartwarming and that kind of thing, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want people to think they're just cozy and twee. That's the danger. It's quite a hard line to cross. A line to walk. I suppose the thing is that what keeps that going? I mean, I do think I basically like to read books that are not, I don't mean not too challenging, but I don't want lots of gore and violence. And some of the sagas I know, and that suits a certain readership, and certain writers are quite what are called gritty. And there can be quite a high level of violence or unpleasantness going on in the home. And that's just not what I personally like to read, and it's not what I wanted to write. But I remember someone early on saying to me, oh, is there a real villain in your books? And I'm like, well, actually, the war is the villain, because that is throwing such horrible things into the mix. I felt people were, in a way, suffering enough. They were deprived of a lot of liberties and freedom. There was constant worry about, relatives, boyfriends, brothers, sons who were away. And there was nothing like the communication that we've got. People would go 18 months after possibly a family member had gone missing before they even knew if that person was alive. And then they would get a letter from a prisoner of war camp. Mm-hmm. So, I think actually when you enter into the story of what people were living through on a day-to-day basis on the home front, it's quite challenging enough.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It was a horrible time. And I think something you said earlier was, it was 1944, but they didn't know that was near the end, did they? And we can look back at it now and think, 6 years. But as far as they were concerned, they were still in the midst of it. So,
absolutely. Yeah, and they'd had so many false dawns. I think everyone thought after El Alamein, which was October 1942, that was going to be the turning point. And then 43, it all looked good. Italy caved in. But of course, the Axis forces really came back strong. And it was only because, I'm going into a history lecture now.
Yeah. So thinking about history, another issue that I guess faces people who are writing about a period in the past is that ideologies change over time, and we're a very different breed now to the people that were in the 40s in the way we think about things. I could even argue, especially women, there's been a lot of change for how women's status and women's roles have been over the last 70 or 80 years. So with your three main protagonists being young women, and you talked a little bit about some of the conflicts that Lily finds herself in. How do you strike that balance of keeping them true to their period and authentic, but still with a relevance to readers today?
When I set out to create Lily, it was very strange. I set out to create all of them. I'd got, as I've explained, my sort of setting and my period for the shop, which was going to be perfect because it's a whole little world, really. You've got a whole hierarchy in a shop, from the management, down through the staff roles. And I got the period. And the characters sort of just came to life fully formed. I started to write and I just knew Lily had these blonde curls rather fly away, and she was trying to tame them, make her human. But of course, she's quite spirited, and she does, certainly initially she's quite impetuous, and she does things which are not always within her remit as a junior member of staff. In terms of dealing with different attitudes, in the second book, in Wartime for the Shop Girls, she learns from her brother, who's the good-looking one of the family, who everyone has thought, is a great success with girls, that actually he's attracted to men. And that is a huge thing for Lily to take on board. And, without ever wanting to introduce an issue as such, it just seemed to me that would be an interesting thing to do, that I could have had Sid as the playboy who had a stream of girlfriends, got a girl into trouble, or however it would have been regarded in those times. But I thought it would be interesting just to turn that on its head, really, and see how Lily and a very conventional family in a very ordinary street in an ordinary town dealt with that at the time. Mm-hmm. And initially Lily is the only one who knows. And she is, of course, quite shocked to start with, because it's just, she hadn't considered such a thing. She tries to inform herself, although Sid, her lovely brother, says, oh, please don't, because the sort of treatment punishments were just horrendous at that time. And she continues to worry about him because it's illegal. But of course she becomes reconciled to it because she loves him for what he is. And actually, there is never an explicit scene with Dora, his mum, about his what were then called tendencies. But Dora, as a mum, actually knows full well that Sid is kind of, in quotes, not the marrying kind. Again, the sort of cover-all phrase that people say, you know, it's like, oh no, well he's just going to sow his wild oats, and you know, well he's got the pick of the girls, he doesn't need to settle down yet, is how the neighbours see it. And Dora, Lily's mum, just sort of keeps this to herself, and Sid will always be Sid, they'll always love him. But that kind of attitude, of course, is a complete anathema to us today. But it was very delicate at the time.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, to get that balance, being accurate, but not offensive. Yeah. Okay. I'm someone who likes to read things in order.
Yes.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone like me who might be put off by reading this as the fifth in a series? Does it handle it?
Yes, I see what you mean. I mean, I think actually, having said that, a lot of people might discover it as the fifth in the series. I mean, I would be the same. I like to start at the beginning and work through to the end. But I mean, of course, I've been a bit unfortunate in bringing these books out. The first one came out in 2019, and then last year there were 3 out, 2 of them in lockdowns. So it's not been the best time to kind of launch yourself as a new on the scene writing sagas. However, you know, I'm very grateful and lucky that the publishers have very much stuck with it, because they very much believe in the characters and the whole concept. So I got the chance to write 2 more, the first one of those 2 being The Victory Girls, and there will be a follow-up to that next year. The thing is that all the books work as standalones. All the past history is explained. If you've had the chance to read The Victory Girls, you should know who everybody is. There's, you know, when Sid comes back, there's a little thumbnail sketch of him describing what we've just been talking about, that, you know, that's how he is. Everybody has moved on, but they've still got their essential characteristics. Beryl is still quite sassy and got a bit of a cheeky attitude. Gladys is the quiet one, you know, so the idea of her trying to have this baby on her own, she's going to need a lot of support. And Lily has got just a huge heart, really. She would help anybody. So the dilemma that she finds herself in is very difficult. But they all work as standalones. You know, every book is a satisfying read in itself. And of course, our hope is that people will want to go back to the start and think, well, how did Lily get like that? Ooh, Beryl's got a husband called Les. Well, I know he works at the store, but who's he? And actually, why aren't any of these guys in the forces, you know? Because, of course, that was quite difficult, giving the girls boyfriends and subsequently husbands who would be around enough. Lily, of course, has a young man called Jim who works at the shop, who is for a small reason, obviously, he's not considered suitable for the army. So he is there. He's an absolute rock to her.
Yeah, excellent. You mentioned writing during lockdown, and I have to say, I didn't know you'd started so recently on the series, but how's that been, writing during weird times that we've been in for the last year and a half? Yeah,
actually, 3 of the books were written before, but were held over for various reasons. It was quite interesting with this last book, with The Victory Girls. I set myself a ridiculous target of trying to write it within a lockdown period of however many weeks that was. And that actually didn't work for me because there was so little else to do. I thought, oh, this is great. It's a great chance to get on. And I know lots of people have started novels or, you know, have been very productive. But for me, working that quickly didn't help. I actually had to go back and not completely revise it, but expand. I was just going too fast because I was trying to meet a deadline. I think actually writers have been some of the most fortunate people during lockdowns. I mean, I've worked at home. I've been freelance for 25 years. first script writing and doing spin-off novels from various soaps that I'd been working on. So there was very little change to my day. People who'd been used to a kind of collaborative working pattern or some kind of office life or a lot of a more social kind of job, I think have suffered hugely. So I'm very aware that I'm among the lucky ones. And of course, I couldn't go anywhere to do any research, which is another reason why it's been great to carry on with the Shop Girls, now the Victory Girls, to carry on with the same characters, because I had so much of the material already at my fingertips. I had one research trip to a museum in January of last year, and I haven't been in one since. The museum I was at became a vaccination centre.
Oh wow, gosh! And I guess a lot of people talk about the COVID crisis and making comparisons between it and Blitz and the whole Blitz spirit, and because it was the last big crisis that the country faced that people can remember, I guess. So do you feel that that's a fair comparison, and do you think that some of the feelings we've all been experiencing this last couple of years get reflected in your writing and in any of your characters' dilemmas?
I think superficially there have been similarities. I mean, people have had notionally some degree of the liberty that we've all become used to removed. And you go back to sort of, those days of queuing for tins of tomatoes and pasta. And I think everybody thought, oh, this is shocking. This is the Blitz spirit. But, it's very, very different. The sort of communication difficulties that they had in the war and just not hearing anything about anybody. We have been able to be connected with people through the wonders of technology. On the other hand, the one thing that they weren't actually deprived of in the wartime, apart from, of course, people who were away fighting or had gone away to do other jobs within this country, was that they went out a lot. Homes were still pretty bleak. People didn't have central heating, they had outside toilets. I remember, gosh, I'm not that old, but, we lived in a house where it would be warm in the room you were in, and then you went up to bed and it's like freezing. So to go to a dance hall, to go to the cinema, and even, to come out to a department store, and Marlowe's has still got a lot of that kind of Mr. Selfridge feel about it, was something really lovely and a treat. So the social life, if you were prepared to, go out in the blackout and risk being bombed in the Café de Paris or whatever, could be great. For some people, the war was fantastic. It was a real opportunity. It's the same with my dad. He worked his way up through Italy with the invasion troops, and he just had a lifelong love of Italy and France as a consequence. But he probably would never have left. He was born in Birmingham. Might never have left the shores of the UK otherwise. Yeah. So it is like it and it isn't really. Yeah.
There's a few comments coming through on the chat, and there seems to be a little bit of debate about whether books should be read in order or not. So I think the majority is saying yes, start at number 1 and work through.
It's not too late.
One of the questions that's come through, which is one I was going to ask you anyway, is about what the next project is, because I see that there's a Wedding Bells book that's
yes, indeed. Well, that is written, and that is a continuation of the Victory Girls. So it will be Wedding Bells for the Victory Girls. Oh, big clue. Spoiler alert. Who is left to get married, we say to ourselves. Yes, that will come out next, I was going to say next wedding season, next April 2022. So that's written. It's got to be edited, copy edited, proofread. And then, when things open up, I might have to start thinking about what next. But at the moment, that's a bit of a blank page. So It will be fun to start. I think, to be honest, I've gone as far as I can with these characters, certainly for now. Although one reader did say to me, Beryl's little boy is called Bobby. And she said, I can just imagine Bobby in the 1960s, as a sort of teddy bear. Yes, right. Note that down.
Yeah. So thanks for asking questions, and anyone else who'd like to add any to the chat, do continue. Meanwhile, I want to ask you about script writing. So you were involved with both The Archers and EastEnders, I gather, which are
Yes.
two of the biggies. So how does first of all, how does writing a novel compare to script writing, and which of these genres do you feel most comfortable in?
Right. Well, it's a bit like comparing apples and pears in a way. On the other hand, what I know is writing dialogue. So I hope that the exchanges between characters in the book are always lively and realistic and authentic, bearing in mind what we've said about the sort of phrases that might be used at the time. And I had to cure myself when I started writing novels of wanting to start every sort of scene or chapter with a line of dialogue. I have to remember that I had to write something a little bit more than a stage direction, which was not just int the Vic, half full or something, but sort of describe whatever pub the people were in, and do a little bit of rather fuller sort of scene setting. So there's some carryover. I mean, I think you'll have gathered from what I just said, I do think in scenes. I mean, obviously it would be a dream if any television company out there would like to take these out, the whole series. But the difference, I suppose, is that you rely, when you're writing scripts, on either sound effects, if it's radio, The Archers, or visuals in the case of EastEnders, and of course the performance that the director and the actors work on together to bring out the full meaning of what you're saying and what you mean that line to express. When you're writing prose, you've got the chance to go into the characters' inner thoughts and their interior lives, really. But I still like to try to show a lot through the dialogue of how people are feeling. I mean, I do think that the dialogue should be able to do a lot of that for you. The old kind of show not tell dictum that they did into you in script writing is still really important in novels, I think.
Yeah. And a question's come through as well, specifically about The Archers. And I was going to ask about generically Archers or EastEnders.
Right.
Were there any big storylines that you were involved in writing in either of those soaps that we'd all remember?
Right. Certainly in The Archers, I was there when, this is going back a bit, I was there from basically in one form or another off and on since 1980. So we did do quite a lot. So, I mean, probably most recently, and one that's still resonating now, was Brian Aldridge, the character of Brian Aldridge, the farmer, his affair with Siobhan in the village, which actually produced a son. And this was critical for Brian because he's a very traditional farmer and he had only daughters. He had Jennifer, his wife, had a son from a previous relationship. But Brian was very keen, he was that sort of man who was very keen to have a son of his own. Siobhan produced a son, subsequently died. Siobhan, not the child. And Jennifer, in a huge noble gesture, who was still with Brian, said that Rory, the little boy, could come and live with them. And Rory is now himself a fully grown young man.
He's grown up to be a very nice young man, hasn't he?
Yes, very nice young man. It turned out very well. But on his 18th, there was I'm not involved anymore, but there was a lovely scene whereby he played a disc that Siobhan had made before she died. So we heard her voice again. Obviously, the actress is still around. And Jennifer listened with him, and that was very bonding for them both. So Rory, yes, he's a great mates with Ben and the sort of, the young brat pack of the village. We've been through several kind of brat packs in the village. Even the characters who are now kind of in their 60s and 70s were brat pack in their day. And that's the great thing. I mean, that's what I found with the books. I've treated the books like an ongoing soap opera. So there are continuing stories, but in each book, to go back what we were saying before, there are new characters introduced as well as returning characters, and different storylines within each book.
Yeah, and I guess within both the saga writing and the long-running series, that character does drive everything, really, doesn't it? That whole understanding of how the characters work and feel and think. And I think you said earlier about almost feeling like they're friends that you're coming back to when you come back to write the next book. Yeah, that's.
I think so. And I mean, there's, the other thing, going back to what we were saying about COVID, is just the power of friendship, actually. And, you know, again, at risk of sounding twee, that community spirit that you see in programs. I mean, you know, why is Call the Midwife so popular? You know, and that's male, female, young, old. It brings whole families together. And the idea of community spirit is just, it's something it's very compelling, I think, really. It's something we'd all like to feel we have or could recover. And yeah, and particularly I think women's friendships are really, really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's been really, really interesting to talk to you. There's lots of really positive comments coming through on the online chat. I can just see it on the corner of my eye, but it's yeah, lots of people very enthused about going off and buying them, reading them in order, and sort of emerging in some good World War II writing. So thanks ever so much for your time, and best of luck with the Wedding Bells. And yeah, we'll see what the next project is. I think a 60s spin-off sounds like a really good one.
You'll see. I'll come back and let you know when I know.
Okay, well, all the best then. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.